Good morning. My name is Christy, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the AutoSuite for Cloud Webcast conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I would now like to hand the conference over to Ms. Mary Greening. Please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Greening, and I'm the Community Manager for the CA Process Automation Global User Community at CA. I just want to let you know before we started the webcast this morning that we have a community over on MyCA. You can join the community at communities.ca.com. We have about 265 members there, and the support engineers are posting technical content weekly. So there's a lot of tips and tricks for your PAM product. We are also looking for users to lead the community as board members. So if you're interested in that, get with me after the webcast. We'd also like to know what you'd like to see for our next webcast, so you can post that on the message board. And we are always looking for users to present what's going on in their environments. So contact me if you're interested in presenting in a future webinar. My contact information is at the bottom of the slide, mary.greening@ca.com. So today, if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A link at the top of the live meeting, or Keith, our presenter, will be opening up the call for questions periodically during the presentation. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Keith Puzey. He's a Senior Principal Engineering Service Architect with CA, and he'll be presenting on AutoSuite for Cloud this morning.
Thanks, Mary. Good morning, good afternoon. As Mary said, my name's Keith Puzey. I work for CA Engineering, and the presentation today we're going to talk about a suite of products called CA Automation Suite for Cloud. I've got a few presentations, and they're just to position what CA Automation Suite for Cloud is and what components make it up. And I'm going to go straight into a demo, and most of the actual webcast will be the demonstration, showing you what the tool does and how it links to process automation. So to start with, the slide you're seeing now, these are challenges that I'm sure you've all come across, and in your day-to-day job, these are things that you actually have to deal with. People asking you for things like self-service reservation, ordering machines, building machines. You've been driven for how to be more productive, how can you cut costs, and how can you generally improve the processes that you do within your organization. And obviously that's why you're using process automation. With the Automation Suite for Cloud, what we're talking about is how can we help you deliver that? How can we move on using the tool and straight away start getting value from the tool set that you're delivering? How can you improve the actual execution, your ratio of engineers to servers, your efficiency, provisioning of applications and servers, and provisioning of infrastructure? How can you do all these things quicker and more efficiently? And the CA solution is what we call CA Automation Suite for Cloud. So it is a suite of products, and this suite of products have been tested and delivered by CA along with content that allows you to actually deliver the functionality. So as you can see on this slide here, these are the core products that make up the suite. So in the top left-hand corner, you see we have the process automation tool. In the top right-hand corner, we have the service catalog, and the service catalog is the UI that end users use to interact with the system, and you'll see this as part of the demonstration. And then these components work with things like CA App Logic for doing provisioning, and we'll talk more about that shortly, and also CA Server Automation, which again is a tool to do with provisioning on VMware, physical, Hyper-V, and the like. And on the right-hand side, we have CA Configuration Automation, and this is the tool that we then use for configuration management of the environment that we're building. So we can build a machine, load software on that machine, and then with the configuration automation, check that machine's been built to a certain standard. And when we combine all these together, oops, let me just press the wrong button. When we combine all these together, what we get is unified automation. So taking all these tool sets and combining them into a very powerful suite of products that is the automation suite for cloud. Now these are some of the things that automation suite for cloud delivers. Now these things are things like predefined content. So we have common components, these various products, but also we ship the content that goes with these products. And this content is the PAM workflows, the service catalog offerings, as we call them, and these have been developed by CA. They're certified and tested and shipped with the product. So day one, you run a simple installation script, and that will load all this content into service catalog and into PAM and make it available to be used. So we can stand the system up very quickly, and everything you're going to see today in the demonstration is the out-of-the-box content that comes with the product. Nothing has been customized. This is exactly what you get day one when you install the product. And that's the whole idea of the suite, is to improve the time to value and the speed that we can deliver value to customers. Now, underneath the solution, we use CA's best-of-breed products. So these are things like server automation that allows you to do things like provisioning VMware machines, physical machines, loading software on top of these machines, and also integration with AppLogic for our grid functionality. So we have a heterogeneous layer of platforms that we can manage. Now, what this makes up this suite of products, just wait for the live meeting to catch up. So what makes up this suite of products, as I mentioned, are these suite of products here. And it allows you to build out public clouds, private clouds, virtual grid fabrics, which is the AppLogic solution. And as I mentioned, out of the box, you get this base content, but then this content is extensible, and you can then customize it and then make it do more. So it's the 80-20 rule. So we hope to deliver 80% of what you need, and you can take this content and then extend it to do more and to customize the environment. And you'll see that as we go through the demonstration. So as I said, very short presentation because I want to get straight into demonstration. At this point, are there any questions before we start the demonstration?
Do we have any questions? Can we open up the line?
Yes, ma'am. If you wish to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Again, as a reminder, if you wish to ask an audio question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. And there are no audio questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's start with the demonstration. So the idea of the webcast is to show you the product, and this is the service catalog UI. This is the entry level that an end user would use to interact with the automation suite for cloud. So we're going to log in as an end user. So this user, D. Davis, is our end user. And when it logs in, what you'll see in the top right-hand corner, you can see that this user is a catalog user. So he has restricted rights to the catalog, to the view we're looking at. You can see the business unit is CA in the top right-hand corner. Within the service catalog environment, we can have this concept of business unit. And a business unit can be used for anything from separating out departments or to separating out the branding. So we could actually have different branding for different logins. So you could log in and be a different division, and that would affect the whole way the screen draws. The icon in the top left-hand corner can be changed, and the whole style of the page can change based on the business unit that the user exists in. And then in the screen here, you see we have these icons, and each icon represents what's called an offering. And the service catalog product has been within CA for many years, and historically it's been used for a standard catalog offering. So that could be anything from an icon that allows you to order a new BlackBerry, to onboard a new user, to order a new desk. These can all be things inside catalog. We now provide this default content that then provides different functionality. So on the right-hand screen here, these icons are what's called the feature page. So these are icons that are being called out as being the most used, the favorites, if you like. And in the left-hand side, these are our folder structures. If I click on these, you drill in and you see more content. So in this case, we've got things like reserved machine, extend reservation. If I go back to the top and go to the foundation, we have the onboarding function. So when you actually want to onboard a user to the system, you can come here, go to user onboarding, you key in the details for the new user, and that will then, once it's been approved, start a workflow to then onboard that user, add that user to relevant groups, and make that user available to our service catalog system. So to show this, we're going to go through how a typical end user would actually request a virtual machine. So if you imagine that you have a development team, they need to build out some machines. They would come into this reserved cloud virtual machine in the middle here. And this is called a form. And this is where we prompt the end user to enter the details for what they actually want for this virtual machine. So we're going to order a VMware machine. And the VMware templates are the machines that I am allowed to order based on my logged in user. So we have a role-based security within the product. So as this user, I'm allowed to see just these two virtual machines that I can order. And I'm going to order Windows 2003. You then get some details on this machine, what it is we're going to order. And in the software packages, what you have is additional software installed on top of this virtual machine. So in this case, we're going to order a 2003 machine. And we could then say, and we want to install the DB client once it's installed. And again, this software is linked to the same role-based security as the images. So you only see the packages that you're allowed to order. We're going to give it a reservation name. I'm going to say user demo. And then further down, we have these requirements. And these are, how many machines do you want, and how big are these machines? So how many systems do you want? How many CPUs do they need? And how much memory? You can also specify if you want additional disks. So the machine will come with a standard disk as part of the template we build. And these will be additional disks that are added to that deployment. And the last questions are, when do you want this machine? So this is a reservation system. So I could order a machine like it says here, order it for 11:15 today, and then return it the same time tomorrow. Or I could order it for a week, a month. We have rules as to how long you can order a machine for, which you can choose. So you set the start time, you set the end time, do that again, July. I'm going to go to end of July. And what will happen is the reservation will be accepted. We have an approval process. Once it's been approved, this will then go into a reservation system, and when it gets to this date and time, we will then build this machine. So it also wants a password. And then we just add this to cart, just like shopping. We've ordered this machine, and we've ordered it for a period of time. And as you can see here, we have a mandatory cost associated with this order. And at this point, I could choose to remove this. I could choose to go and order more machines. Or I can say, right, this is what I want, and I'm now going to order this. Just click show details to show the fact we can still see what we've ordered here. This is what we ordered. And we're going to submit this. So we do a submit to cart. And that error is because we've gone past the time. So let me just change that time. I can't mix and do that. So we'll go back to that because the clock just ticks over. We'll submit the cart. And what we'll see is the machine will change, the order will be submitted, and we'll get a status message at the top of the screen, as you can see. So this full ticker at the top of the screen shows the fact that we've submitted that request, and if I click on it, I can check the status of this request. So I can see here that it's pending approval. You may have noticed that the amount has now gone down because I've moved the clock forward by 15 minutes. It was 600, now it's 59975. So this request is now pending approval, and I can click on the pending approval status over here to find out who that's been posted to. So this entry here says that the request has been sent to my line manager. So the user I'm logged in is an Active Directory user, and automatically we will post this to the line manager defined inside Active Directory. That can be customized, but the default action is it goes to your line manager. And that manager would receive an email to say there's now this request pending approval. Click done. And we're going to approve that in just a second. And before we go and approve it, I'll show you the other things that we can do while we're here. So as well as actually being an order machine, so we just went into this reserved cloud virtual machine, we also have what are called templates. And the difference with a template is, if I choose this, it's very similar in that you choose the environment you want to order the machine for, but instead of allowing the user the option to choose the amount of memory and CPU and disk, you have predefined offerings. And as you can see here, we have these predefined. So in this case, this user has two predefined offerings, a small and a large. And the intention of this is to restrict what users can order. So it may be that certain users, you want to give them the option of the a la carte, they can order whatever they like, or the fixed menu, and they get small, medium, large, or whatever you choose to give them. So we'll call this a template reservation. And in the same way, you choose the start time. So in this case, you might say we want this to start towards the end of the week, and it's going to run until sometime in July. So in this case, the reservation won't start today. It's going to start on Friday, and we're going to have it until mid-July. And we just add that to cart as well. And we can submit that. Now, the other things we can do is this. The other things we can do is also so you've ordered a machine. Just click on that. So you've ordered a machine, and you may want to return it or extend it. So you have an active machine. I'll click on here. This will show me all of my active machines that have been ordered, and I can then choose to extend that reservation. Now, again, we have rules around this as to how long you can extend a reservation for before it requires approval. So in this case, I ordered this machine earlier today. It's due to expire tomorrow. It's currently ready, so the machine is actually active as of today. But I have the option to now approve moving that reservation out for some more days, perhaps another few weeks. So each of these, you can see these offerings have a pattern. You order a machine, you can then extend that reservation. You may choose to return it early. So in here we have the return. So I order a machine for a month, and 2 weeks into that reservation I decide that I'm finished that machine, I can return it. And what that will do is that will then update the charging and give you a credit back on the money that you booked it for the full month. You return it halfway through the month, you will get a credit on your invoicing because you had to return that machine early. And that's all automatic within the system. And we can also choose to do a change. So we order the machine with 1 CPU and perhaps 2 GB memory. We can modify that reservation. A bit like we can modify the end date, I can then go into here, and I can go into VMware, and I can go into the reservation that we've got. I can choose the virtual machine that we've got ordered. And then we have the option to modify the CPU, to modify the memory. So this is how an end user would interact with the system. Yeah, these are all the things. Now, everything we're looking at here is controlled by security. So you only see the offerings that you're allowed to see based on your login. So if I log out of this, and I log in as the approver. So if you remember a few minutes ago, the user D. Davis just ordered a machine, and it was sent to the approver to be approved. Now, you may have noticed some emails came in. If I just bring up the email client. Now, this is basically set in a debug mode, so it shows you all the emails just so you understand what happens. So these are the emails that have been sent to say to this user, so a machine has been ordered, and it requires your approval. And that's all the details there. It says when it's going to start, how long it's for. There's also an email here that actually has the catalog details and the cost. So the end user, the approver would have received an email saying that the reservation needs approving. And when he logs in, he'll see this. So you'll see what's been ordered, and we can click on that, and it will show what's been ordered. I'll click on the show details. Then the approver can see what machine's been ordered, the size of the machine. They can see the reservation period that's been ordered, and has the option to approve it. Over here, we have the approve reject. So I may reject this if I don't believe it's correct for this end user, or I may approve it. And in this case, we're going to click on approve and just change this to approve. And click save. And the status will change from approved, as you can see on the screen here, to pending fulfillment. If I click on the tracking tab, what you'll see now is you'll see that this has now started some workflows. So in the tracking, these two objects here, if you look on the right-hand side, just move that over, you'll see that these are workflow engines. So these two workflows are now active. The top one is completed, and that top one was used for the approval process. And the second one, which is fulfillment, is the one that's now running, and that will deal with the fulfillment of the machine. And these workflows, as you'll see in a second, are the ones that are predefined with content. So everything you're seeing, as I mentioned, comes with the base service content. And also everything is also tracked in the audit trail. So each of the steps we just went through is logged into the audit log to show when a request is made, when the email is sent, when the approving is sent, when the approver is. We can create rules around that approval process. So those rules can be if an approver hasn't approved in a certain period of time, we can escalate to another person or to another manager. So at the moment, that request has now gone into the approval, and if I just switch to our process automation system. So one thing you'll notice is that we're using Process Automation 3. That's what the current version of ASC uses. The next version will be using Process Automation 4.0. I'll just refresh this. These are the steps that just happened. So the first step is the approval. So this was started when we submitted the request. And this is the whole approval process waiting for the approval process to happen. As you can see, that completed properly. And then the fulfillment is currently running. And what this is doing is, this is now waiting for the reservation to actually complete. So this is waiting for our reservation to be built. So that'll be the virtual machine to be cloned, to be started, to then be discovered on the network, and then any software that is required for that machine to be pushed to that machine. So we'll leave this running, and we'll come back to this when that process is stopped. And while it's doing that, I'll show you some of the workflows that we ship with the product. I'll just go to the orchestration screen. So this folder structure here is the folder structure created when we load what are called content packs. So a content pack contains these workflows along with the icons and the forms that you just saw in the service catalog. So within the catalog, that icon, the click point, the form that populates and the drop downs, and all the things that are required for service catalog to start a workflow are in the content pack that we ship. And as you can see these ones here, if I take an example, there's an example here of ASC App Logic Manage App. I double click on that. This is a relatively typical workflow that we ship. And they all start in a similar way in that the service catalog will call the workflow and start the workflow. We then have the first step, which is just here. And what this does is it will go back into service catalog to extract any form data. So if you imagine we chose a number of CPUs or any other details we put into the form, this would go back to catalog, extract that data into a data set inside PAM. And then in this instance, we then have these steps here. And this workflow is used for multiple steps. So with the app logic functionality we have, the workflow can be things like start an application, stop application, restart, and deprovision. That's what these steps are doing here. Each one of these is, we have a branch here that says if start, go this way, if stop, go this way, restart is here, and deprovision is here. When that completes, we come to the right hand side here, and we then go through the rest of these loops. And what I'll do is I'll show you this workflow running in just a few seconds. We'll go through and actually order an app logic instance, and you'll see the workflow and you actually see it running. And as I mentioned, this is the content that we ship. So all of these workflows are the start request forms. If I click on there, you'll see we have the start request forms that go with it. It's the default content. And then we have global data sets that are customized. So this content is installed and you edit the global data set accordingly. And if I look at these other ones here, you'll see they're very similar. So if I go into the ASC one, we have the standard ASC content. These are for snapshots and provisioning of virtual machines. The Hyper-V is the same. So we have some standard Hyper-V ones. And that's another one for server auto-based content. And also this one is the one we use for Active Directory. So I mentioned that we actually have the AD is used on the back end. And these are the workflows. I'll double click on that one. So in this case, this is a create an AD user. So the workflow will start. We'll go back to the form to get details. And then we go off and we connect to AD. We create a user. We allocate a password. We then get the manager for that user. And then update the user, log back into the service catalog, which is what it's doing here. Update the status so we're completed, and then log back out of service catalog. And we'll go through and run a couple of these now. So I'll just go back to our process list again. You'll see our fulfillment is still running. And if I just bring up the VMware console, you'll see that the machine is starting to be built. So if I get the time up here, if you remember, when we actually ordered the reservation, we ordered a virtual machine, and the start time was going to be 11:30. So at 11:30, the process started. So the reservation kicked off. This machine is now being built, and it will go through, for our server automation, we will build this virtual machine. It will clone the machine, power it up, it will customize it based on the rules we've created. And when that machine's live, it will then go ready, and we'll get an email confirmation to say that machine is now ready. And that's how a reservation will function. Let's minimize that again. So if we show you how this works, let's log out of this user and go back in as D. Davis. So we're going back as an end user. We'll just empty the cart for a second. Now, one thing we've got is, we already have an existing reservation for this user. If I click on the dashboard link, you'll see this shows in the top of the screen. These are the currently running reservations for this logged in user. So I have one reservation, number 168. That's the machine reservation name. That's the actual name. That's the IP address. That's the name of the reservation. On the right-hand side, we have things like the CPU, the memory, come down, scroll across. The current power state, that's turned on, and the reservation is currently ready. And some of these have links. So in this case, we have a link for ready and a link for the reservation time. And these are active links. So in this case, That's my in-time reservation. I can click on that. And it actually takes me to the form where I want to extend the reservation, the form I showed you earlier. So this will populate with this reservation and allow me to then, down the bottom here, click on extend. Yeah, so it's all linked back to the default offerings. But what I'm going to show you is a full workflow. So we're going to go into the app logic. So we go back to our request. And if I click on the IaaS for app logic, you see we've got this custom application. And it's very similar to the VMware one that we just did. I'm going to choose a grid. So App Logic is CA's grid technology. It's a hypervisor that forms multiple machines into a grid. And on that grid, you can then load applications. So with the VMware, we just built a virtual machine. A Windows machine is a single instance. With App Logic, what you have is templates or applications. And these are multiple virtual machines combined. So when this draws, you'll see the list of our templates that are available within the system we've got for the demo. This will draw in just a second. And the sort of things you'll see will be, we have things like TWiki, Sugar CRM. We do have some standalone machines, so like CentOS. So there's the list. And we have things like down here, we have a TWiki server. We have a CRM system. We have a LAMP stack. We also have things like process automation in the appliance, EEM in the appliance, and these VDSs are standalone machines, so Solaris, CentOS. For the demo, we're going to actually use a TWiki, so just click on TWiki. And at this point, we're going to App Logic to get details on how to build this appliance. So at the bottom of the screen, we're going to get details on what we call boundary properties. So what are the various attributes required to build this appliance. So whilst we're on that, I can get an application name. So I'm going to call this TWiki. And just a second to draw. And the resources will be things like the CPU, the memory, and the bandwidth. And the properties are each application can have different properties. So depending on how the appliance has been designed, it will depend on the actual questions you'll be asked. Now for TWiki, I believe the only mandatory one we need is the mail server name. So as you can see here, it asks me how many CPUs do I want for this application, how much memory, and how much bandwidth. Let's just lessen the bandwidth for this. And also we will enter the name of the mail server. The allowed host is this actual appliance has a firewall on the front end, and this will then dictate the rule for that firewall. In this case, it allows all entry, but you can then dictate a subnet or machine that can connect to this actual application. And as before, we'll just do an add to cart and check out. Now, each of these offerings that we're doing, you can dictate if they require approval or not. So it may be that for certain users, they need approval and other users don't, or certain business units need approval. I'm going to click on Save and Submit. And as before, if I click on this, we'll see the status. It's currently submitted. And that will change in a second to pending approval. And as before, if I click on the approval button, you will see that approval has been posted to the approver called Approver. So we're going to log on as Approver. And as before, in our pending actions, we'll see it's now pending approval. And we can just approve that from here. Before we logged in and reviewed it, but we're going to do it this way this time. We just approve that. And as before, in the tracking, what we'll have is all the PAM workflows associated with this offering that we just ordered. So again, we'll have an approval workflow. and a fulfillment workflow. And just click on that again. And this will draw in just a second. Okay. So as you can see, the approval workflow is completed because we just approved it. And the ASC App Logic Provisioning App workflow is currently running. And that will run until we've actually provisioned this appliance. And if I go to the PAM screen, just refresh this. So you see that was the approval one. And this is the App Logic. And if I double click on that, we can watch the app actually running. So as I mentioned before, the first step is get information from catalog. So in this case, this information would be the CPU, the memory, the bandwidth, those mandatory properties that were in the form. We gather that at this stage, load into a data set. We check if the request is for a custom or pre-configured, and that will decide which way we go. And then at this stage, we check, is it, at the bottom of the form, there's a button that said, do you want to start the application or just provision and don't start? Now, ours is set to provision and start, which you can see is here. So provision start is true. We go to number 2, which then calls this operator here. And this operator is the provision app with a start. And that will now stay in that state until the application is provisioned. So at this point, we've actually made a call to AppLogic, and the application is currently being provisioned. And I'll show that in the AppLogic console. So just refresh this screen. And what we should see in a second is, let me just check we're still logged in. Okay, let me just refresh that. Yep. So there you go. The PAM T-Wiki. This is the wiki that we just ordered. So the workflow is actually taking the details of that wiki. It's now started to create it, and in a second, in the middle here, you see it's currently stopped. That state will change to building as we build out the application. And then once it's built, it'll go to starting, and then it'll go to started. And it'll be like these other ones here that show you how long they've been running. And I'll show you what a T-Wiki looks like. So this is a template here, the T-Wiki R14 at the top is the actual template we're building. If I click on that, you'll see what makes up this T-Wiki. So this is launching the editor. And the editor is used for customizing these applications or for building new ones. And in just a second, this will draw. Now, while we're at this drawing, I'll explain what's on this palette. So on the left-hand side here, when it's drawn, what you'll see is this is the library of objects that can be used within the actual palette. So if you imagine using Visio, in the left you may have stencils, and you drag them onto the screen and draw lines. It's a very similar principle. So in the left we may have Windows servers, Linux servers, load balancers, switches, firewalls, which are represented as objects in here, and you drag them onto the screen, and then you build relationships between those objects. And you build these, then you save it as a template, and then you can make copies. So a typical T-Wiki in this case will have 2 or 3 objects, but an application can be many objects. Let's just refresh this and start again. While we change that, we do the one above it a lot quicker. And what we're currently doing, it may be because we're spawning with this one, is we're taking this as a template and we're cloning an example of this for the user that just ordered it. So when this draws in just a second, you'll see the application. Let's do that. If I drag it over there, you'll see that in a second you'll see this PAM T-Wiki will change from stopped to building, and then it'll start building. leave that running. I'll come back to that in just a second. So you see the workflow is still waiting. This is still waiting for the build process to finish. And in service catalog, that will still be saying pending fulfillment. When this finishes and the machine is built, the last few steps are we allocate an IP address to this appliance. We update a value to say that IP address is in use, and then we tell service catalog the machine is built, and that then the process will complete. And if I go into here, I can show you a completed workflow, which I ran earlier. So you see, we go down there, provision, and then up to this right side, which goes to the steps of the IP allocation, and then locking that away into service catalog. That's not going to draw, so we'll come back to that. And as you can see there, the T-Wiki is now building, and that's now building out the application. And I'll try one more thing before we move away from here and just see if I can launch one of the other ones. So I'm just going to the Sugar CRM. We'll open it read only. Looks like we have no luck loading this, but okay, we'll move on. Okay. So as you can see, the workflow will build. And if I just go back there, you'll see this now says running, and that will stay running until the workflow is completed, and then it will stay completed, and the status inside service catalog will then change to a completed request. And finally, let's these and go back to the orchestrator. We also ship up the top here the quick starts, and these are the quick start guides. So these are all the quick starts for the AppLogic instance. So these are examples of getting the information, starting and stopping and restarting, provisioning, and this is the quick start for the operators. And also, if I create a new process flow, we're just going to create a new process. And I go into there. We have the server automation operators. So if I click on the server automation, you'll see the operators that we've used throughout this demonstration. So in just a second, on the left-hand side. So that's draw, there you go. So we have the AppLogic operators. So these do AppLogic functions. We then have the, put that down, software delivery, things like Hyper-V, the LPAR. So all the platforms that are supported inside server automation are exposed in operators here. And if we come down to the VM, we've got things like provision a virtual machine, provision if I get the VMware ones. These are the SSRM ones, reservation manager, create reservation, extend, cancel, approve, that kind of thing. So all these different operators are added as part of the server automation build. So if we leave that running, and I think it's a good time to open up for questions. So Christy, could you open the line for questions?
As a reminder, if you wish to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And there are no audio questions on this end.
Okay, well, that finally did launch, so before we do anything else, let me just show you, this is an example of an AppLogic application. These are inbound and outbound ports. In this case, we have a load balancer. The output from the load balancers go to these web servers, and the web servers are showing a MySQL database and a file store, and then we have a monitor to monitor the environment. So this is something that's been defined by a designer who's built out this application. These are the objects I talked about, so we can just drag on another application server. I'll open it read-only, so I can't do that. But you normally drag that onto the UI, and then you draw these relationships, and then save that as a template. So this is the example of the T-Wiki that we're currently building. So if I go back to the Right, so here, you'll see this PAM-T wiki. It's currently stopped, which means it's in the final stages. And in a second, that will change to starting and started, and that will contain the PAM-T wiki that we just ordered. So, are there, then, let me just check there's no questions online. Mary, are there any questions on the Q&A? I don't see any. So if there are no questions on the line, I'll hand it back to Mary.